Before Jesus sent out the disciples to the uttermost parts of the earth, he gave them a little trial run. He gave them an opportunity to get their feet wet, to practice an apprenticeship of sorts, a student teaching of sorts. We're going to play in just a moment an excerpt from the video series The Chosen. And just a little plug for The Chosen. We're going to be showing after Easter a 6-week evening viewing discussion of 6 of the episodes of The Chosen. Probably on Wednesday nights, that's yet to be determined. But it's going to be a good opportunity to know Jesus even better. But tonight, or this morning, I'm going to have shown just a segment of The Chosen in which Jesus gives an assignment, this assignment to go to his assignment to his first disciples, to go to the neighboring countryside and surrounding villages and to tell people about him. Let's see how that goes. So in the 1950s, this fellow's grandparents, Alvin and Ellen Knutson, made the suggestion that this congregation began supporting a missionary through the World Mission Prayer League. Her name was Ruth Overvold. How many of you know her or met her? Quite a few. Because we did, in fact, begin to support Ruth, who went to India for 5 years, and then after that went to neighboring Nepal for 26 years. 31 years as a missionary overseas. Ruth was a nurse, a registered nurse. And the ministry she did there, as I understand, was quite amazing. She lived to be 101 years old after she returned to the States from overseas. She went to work at the World Mission Prayer League, WIMPL, headquarters in Minneapolis. Now, do you think that Ruthie, as she was called, do you think Ruthie felt any of the anxiety that those first disciples of Jesus felt when they were sent out? She's a farm girl from North Dakota going halfway around the world to a very different people group, very strange people group. I think she very much felt like those early disciples felt upon their first mission assignment. I'm sure she was nervous, but she went. When she heard God's call to go, she went. Some years later, a young missionary named Mariah Jewell, let's show that picture. Mariah, also working for the World Mission Prayer League, Mariah coming from Minnesota, heard God's call to go, and she too went. She went to South Sudan, a very dangerous place. She went to teach the children of missionary kids so that those parents could be free to share Jesus with the people of South Sudan. We supported Mariah and continued to support her even after she met and married Tobias Meyer. Tobias worked for another mission organization called Missionary Aviation Fellowship, or MAF. So Mariah, when she married Tobias, switched her mission affiliation from the World Mission Prayer League to Missionary Aviation Fellowship, but we continue to support them here. And another missionary we continued to support after Ruth left Nepal was a fellow named Richard Rasmussen, who ended up working for the Wimple headquarters in Minneapolis. And Janet shared this with me this morning. When he was here on one of his visits, he gave her this fabric weaving, I'm not sure what to call it, from Nepal, where he also had worked along with Ruthie. So our congregation has a history, and even before Ruth Overvold, we supported missionaries. We supported missionaries locally, and we supported missionaries around the world. Can we see the next slide, please? Now, the world is a pretty big place, a very big place. But this congregation has had a role in supporting missionaries in several places around the world. Now, this map is a little misleading. If it was a little bigger, well, it is bigger here. You can see that it cites that the United States is a Christian nation, divided between that area which is predominantly Protestant and that which is predominantly Roman Catholic, and that little area there around Utah, primarily Mormon. But it's a bit of a stretch, I think, to call the United States a Christian nation today. Christianity is waning in our country. Only 67%, 2/3 of the population of our country, would identify themselves as Christians. 2/3 of our population identify themselves as Christians, and only 21% of our population here in the United States is at worship on any particular Sunday. 21%. And only 9% of our country's population are, like many of you, here every Sunday. 9% feel it's important to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy by being here on a particular Sunday. So to call our nation today a Christian nation, I don't know. So I checked that out with our own statistics here at Calvary. I grabbed our church directory and I went through it and I counted. I counted all the people who are listed in our church directory. There are 222 of us. 222 of us. But our average attendance, since I came here, 1st of February, is 63. And it looks like a little less than that today. So 63, or 68, I think that was our average, is 28% of 222. So we're a little better than the national average, but nothing to write home about. We've got a lot of gospel sharing work to do here in the United States, and that's important. But this morning, I want to talk to you about Jesus to the nations, beyond these walls, to the rest of the world. Those scriptures that we read this morning speak about sharing the gospel with the world and that the world will come to recognize us. In the book of Revelation, we're told that there will come a time, as sung in that song, where every people and tribe, every nation and tongue will acknowledge Jesus. But we've got our work to do between now and then. At our outreach team meeting this past Tuesday night, I was very pleased with the way that went. We discovered we have a pot of money that has been given specifically for missions, but hasn't been sent out for various legitimate reasons. Well, we want to change that. We want to use these dollars that have been given for gospel. We want to use them for that purpose, the purpose for which they were donated and intended. And so we've got a proposal that we're going to make to the council at its April 8th meeting, a proposal that I think will be accepted, because I think we've got some very good leaders on our church council. And this proposal is that we will continue to support the Myers there with MAF in Chad. But in addition to that, we will support another missionary family, this one with the World Mission Prayer League. So we intend to reaffiliate with the World Mission Prayer League and support two missionaries simultaneously. So on the 1st of April, in a couple of weeks, the envelope in your bulletin will say MAF. We'll continue to support them. And then if the council approves, the envelope in your bulletin on the 1st of May will be for the World Mission Prayer League, and we will just alternate that every month. But in addition to that, we hope to give a significant gift to Nancy Hill's nephew and his wife, the Mileses, Terry and Rachel Miles, who have been here before. When I talked to Terry this week, he said that he used to spend summers here. He's been to Calvary many times as a boy, visiting his Aunt Nancy. So we hope to support that family too, at least for a year, and then we'll see how things go. They work with the Wycliffe Bible translators, and they're going to be moving to Vanuatu, an island in the South Pacific, this fall, assuming sufficient funding is found. So I'm excited about these mission and missionaries that our congregation will continue to support, and in addition, that we'll be supporting additionally. After Tuesday night's outreach team meeting, I called the World Mission Prayer League, and I was given the phone number for Luke Schroeder. Luke Schroeder and his wife Ruth are missionaries with the World Mission Prayer League in the Philippines. And our outreach team decided this was the couple that we wanted to support for a number of reasons. I said to Luke, could you introduce yourself to our congregation this Sunday morning during worship? I was hoping to do a live interaction, but they had another commitment this Sunday morning. They're on home leave right now in Indiana, although he was born in Illinois, grew up in Indiana. So he's a Midwestern boy. But his wife, Ruth, is from the Philippines. She's from the area in which they live and worship. So Luke said he could send us a video describing, introducing themselves and describing their work in the Philippines. I'm so pleased with this video he sent, because in addition to them introducing themselves to us, he tells a story that I think will resonate with a lot of you Norwegians here in this congregation. So let's hear that story. This is almost 12 minutes long.
Greetings, Calvary Lutheran Church, out of Lee, Illinois.
We are
Luke
and Ruth Schroeder, and we're missionaries in the Philippines with the World Mission Prayer League. Luke and I have 5 children. Our youngest is Gideon. He's 7. Next one is Hadassah. She's 10. Then Daoud, he's 12. Alasa is 14. And Yahia, our oldest, is 15. Luke and I are serving in the southernmost part of the Philippines. I'm a Bible translator with SIL, that's Summer Institute of Linguistics, which is Wycliffe.
and we work with an unreached people group, the Central Sama of Sulu, Philippines, and other parts of the coastlands of the Philippines. And something special about this people group is
I'm from the people group. I translate the Bible for my people. Me and my project are currently working on the Old Testament.
something interesting about the Sama are that they are an unreached people group. Now, if you don't know what an unreached people group is, missiologists, those who study mission work, they define an unreached people group as being a people group with less than the needed amount of believers among it to be able to evangelize their own people. And so often missiologists have set this number at about 2%. When 2% of a people group consider themselves followers of Christ, there's enough momentum to be able to have them do the work to share the gospel with their own people. And currently, the Sama are right on that boundary line. Actually, a worthwhile prayer request. 98% of Sama people are considered Muslims, and 2% of the Sama are believers in Christ, of which one is my wife, Ruth. This reflects something that I've had as a calling on my life since a little child. I've always resonated, I guess, with the Bible verse, Romans 15:20, where the Apostle Paul says, it's always been his ambition to preach the gospel where Christ was not known, so that he would not be building on someone else's foundation. Not necessarily that I had no desire to build on someone else's foundation, but just having my eyes, since I was little, aware and looking towards the areas of the world where Christ was not known. And so I ended up going to the Philippines. If you know anything about the Philippines is not known for being a Muslim country. It's known for being a Catholic country. We happen to live in the southern Philippines, as mentioned by Ruth earlier. And there in the southern Philippines, there's a lot higher amount of Muslims. We live on the main island of Mindanao. On Mindanao, there's still not a majority of Muslims, but larger populations of Muslims, where about 20% of the population of Mindanao is Muslim. And then Ruth comes from the little islands that jut off the side of Mindanao and head down towards Malaysia, called the Sulu Archipelago. She comes from Siasi Sulu, and Siasi Sulu is a place that is 95% Muslim. The Sama people are then definitely an unreached people group. But this is enough about the Sama for a little bit, and enough about us. I heard something very interesting about your church. I already know that you're Lutherans, and I heard that your church comes from a Norwegian background. Now, with a last name like Schroeder and with a skin complexion like Ruth's, you can tell that neither of us are Norwegian. Actually, I come from a German background and have been a member of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod for a lot of my life. However, I have come under the influence of Scandinavian Lutherans, particularly in the World Mission Prayer League. Over my years of serving in the World Mission Prayer League, I've come across names that you might be familiar with that I never heard of in my background, names like Johann Ernst, Philip Spener, Carlo Zanias, and then particularly a name that came up in conversation with Pastor Jeff was Hans Nielsen Hauge. Sure hope I pronounced that right. I've taken interest particularly in Hauge because I think, even from how I heard it from Pastor Jeff, we share a conviction that God is calling all men in his church to serve, and that's something the World Mission Prayer League has, that conviction that yes, the World Mission Prayer League sends out pastors to do mission work, but yes, the World Mission Prayer League also sends out lay people like myself to do mission work, to unreached people groups and on the frontier. The World Mission Prayer League particularly has an emphasis on the frontier. And I heard another thing about your church. I heard that your church is around 150 years old, and I couldn't help but ask Pastor Jeff about something. And this is actually a question for all of you as well. I don't know the history of your church, but one of my heroes of the faith is a Norwegian Lutheran, and he was a missionary to the Philippines. There's a book about him called Philippiner Lund. And Philippiner Lund, the Philippiner part of that in Norwegian means that, Lund from the Philippines. And he is a man poor man, grew up in Norway, came over to America, and he actually studied at Augsburg Seminary, which was a Norwegian Lutheran seminary prior to it merging in with some of the mergers that took place. In the past, it was a seminary of free Lutheran doctrine. And then after going to the seminary, he didn't graduate. He went to school there, and from what I read, he was considered somewhat a genius, but he didn't graduate from there. They ended up going out to the Philippines, he and his wife. And what I know for a fact that he traveled quite some far distances in America, because at one point he was associating with a Norwegian Lutheran church out in California. And so I just wonder, maybe someone in the Illinois area would remember somewhat of his story. But this is why he is a hero to me. First of all, let me show you his picture. This is Missionary Lund, and you can see him with a bunch of Muslim Sama Bangingi rulers, the Datus is what they're called. And then here we have a government official. And Lund, of course, Missionary Lund is the man with the cowboy hat in the background. And I love the picture because I live this picture. I live in my life with my wife and my family and living among the Sama people group. I speak the Sinama language, and sometimes I have become a cultural interpreter when others want to engage with the Sama people. So I have been this man where someone else has something they want to tell a Sama community and bring up, and so I am the go-between man, particularly with freedivers. The freediving population, international champions, have wanted to meet the Sama because they're considered really good ocean divers. I saw one of the images earlier of a boy diving down. And so I've been that man that someone has a reason that they want to talk with the Sama, and they go through me because Ruth speaks English really well, and I've learned the Sinama language, and so we've been a really good go-between for that. But I'm also, Lund is a personal hero of mine. One is because of his heart. He went to the southern Philippines where Christianity hadn't really arrived. The Muslims have been at odds with Catholics for over 400 years, the arrival of Magellan onwards. And so even some of the tribes of Mindanao that weren't Muslim had 0 Christians when missionary Lund arrived, which was really awesome because he got to share the gospel with one tribe, the Subanun people, and the Subanun people are virtually, 100% Christian to this day, basically, at least in certain areas, and they're like a bulwark of the Christian Missionary Alliance Church right now in the southern Philippines. And Lund was one of, if not the first person to share the gospel with them. And then another thing that's really awesome about him is that he saw the Muslims as well, wanted to share the gospel with them. He met a young man at the wharf and found out that this Muslim young man had heard a little bit from Catholics and wanted to become a Catholic priest. And so Lund sort of intercepted him and shared with him the gospel and taught him doctrine. And this young man, Matthias Quadra, is actually from my wife's home island of Siasi, Sulu. And he became a pastor. He went to a seminary. He actually, upon his conversion, he would go into mosques and teach hymns in his language, which is actually Tausug. It's my wife's mother's language. If we get to visit you in person, we'll be able to explain things a little bit better. But he went and he'd sing Christian hymns translated into his language in the mosque. And the church that my wife grew up in, she grew up in a church that the property for it was donated by the Quadra family. And then also something really neat about missionary Lund and his wife Hulda, it's actually David Lund and his wife Hulda Lund. They were the first to set up, it was a school for girls in Zamboanga City, and it eventually became a Bible school, Ebenezer Bible College, which one thing special about Ebenezer is that this is where my wife graduated Bible college, and eventually that led her to get a job as a mother tongue translator for her language. But also pretty cool about this school is that when it was still a girls' college, there was like a 12-year-old boy, Florentino de Jesus, that was just running around the property being taken care of on the property of the original Bible college. And when it became a Bible college taking both males and female students, he was one of the first students. And then he ended up being sent along with another man. The whole class was praying, "Don't send me to Sulu." Heads of the Bible college picked 2 lucky students, and they were praying, "Anywhere but Sulu, Lord." And Florentino de Jesus got sent to Sulu. He was there prior to World War II. And sometime in maybe the 60s or so, my father-in-law was a young man already in World War II. So I guess just after World War II, because he had a son of this Filipino missionary in his school band, he attended a meeting and he became a follower of Jesus Christ. And so actually, in a roundabout way, my wife, who was raised Christian Missionary Alliance, went to a Christian Missionary Alliance Bible College. Actually, Missionary Lund, who was a Lutheran, but partnered with the Christian Missionary Alliance at the turn of the century in the southern Philippines. Roundabout way, I have Missionary Lund to thank for my wife. I certainly have Norwegian Lutherans and other Lutherans with a mission spirit that want to reach unreached people groups, such as the World Mission Prayer League, have them to thank for sending out a college student at the time on a 2-year internship, and then after my internship was done, since 2005 until now, we've been serving in the southern Philippines. So anyways, I don't know if that will resonate with any of you. I do love the chance to get to encourage churches to be passionate about Christ's mission, to be passionate about the fact that there are people in the world that need to know Jesus, and that you can be a part of that. So we're hoping that we'll get the chance to visit you prior to our departure for the Philippines. Whatever the case is, may the Lord bless your church, may your hearts be turned towards Him, and may it spill out into His mission. The Lord bless and keep you.
So what do you think? Interesting connection there, isn't there? Yeah. So I'm hoping the Schroeder family will indeed be able to come and visit us before they return to the Philippines in June, I think it is. So I'm wondering if Luke, he seems pretty confident, self-confident, but he's been doing this now for a number of years, over, 10 years. But I wonder if he too wasn't a little bit nervous at the beginning, like those first disciples were, nervous about the task that was before him, going to a very different place than Illinois and Indiana in which he grew up to share the gospel. I'm guessing he did. But when God says go, I hope that we will respond as the prophet Isaiah did. When God said, "Who shall I send?" He said, "Here I am, send me, send me." You know, I don't know, God calls us to different fields, doesn't He? Some of you He's called to the cornfield, or the soybean field, or the educational field, or the medical field, or the engineering field. But some of us, He calls to the mission field. And maybe that's you. Maybe that's you that He's calling to serve overseas. Or maybe it's you He's calling to serve here as the next pastor of this congregation. Jesus for the nation means Jesus for Illinois as well as for the Philippines and other places. So it's a wonderful thing when a young person like Matt here, or like Tucker up there, hears God's call to go and goes. But don't think that mission work is just for young people. This past Monday we celebrated St. Patrick's Day. You know that St. Patrick wasn't an Irish person. Patrick was a British fellow. He was a Briton. And he went as the missionary to the Irish. Patrick was the missionary to the Irish and responsible for the conversion of the island of Ireland to Christianity. Do you know how old Patrick was when he went to Ireland as a missionary? 60 years old. He wasn't a spring chicken. Many of us aren't spring chickens. But yet when God calls you to go, you go. But God doesn't call everyone to go to that mission field, but He does call us to be supporters of mission activity. Supporters through our prayers, through our financial giving, through our interest in and attention to mission activity around the world. I don't know. Is God calling you to some particular mission? Here? Somewhere far away? Is God calling you to go in person or in prayer or with your pocketbook? I'm so happy that this congregation has a history of mission support. And I pray that as we move forward, we'll be able to continue that support in even more effective and faithful ways. Amen. This next